FBI, open up. We have a warrant for the arrest of Desmond Whitlock. You have 10 seconds to open this door.
I haven't done anything. You need to show me the paperwork first.
You don't get to make demands. Open this door now or we're breaching.
The two men standing on the porch of the Whitlock residence at 11:47 a.m. on a Saturday morning wore navy blue windbreakers with FBI printed in bold yellow letters across the back. They carried what appeared to be service weapons, spoke with commanding authority, and moved with the confidence of federal agents executing a high-priority warrant. But Sergeant First Class Desmond Whitlock had spent 18 years in the United States Army, including 4 combat deployments and 6 years as an instructor at Fort Bragg. He knew what real federal agents looked like. He knew how they moved, how they spoke, how they presented credentials, and the two men on his porch failed every test his trained eye applied within the first 30 seconds. What these fake agents didn't know was that behind the door they were threatening to breach, Whitlock wasn't alone. His entire squad from the 82nd Airborne Division had gathered for a post-deployment reunion barbecue. 12 combat veterans, all trained in tactical operations, all watching the confrontation unfold through the home security system Whitlock had installed after his 3rd deployment. The criminals had chosen what they thought was an easy target. They had made the worst mistake of their lives. Before we continue, where are you watching from? If this is your first time here, please hit that subscribe button. Stories like these need to be shared, and your support helps us bring more truth to light. Desmond Whitlock had enlisted in the Army at 19, fresh out of high school in Fayetteville, North Carolina. Over 18 years, he'd risen from private to sergeant first class, earned a Bronze Star and 2 Purple Hearts, and completed deployments to Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, and Somalia. His wife, Simone Whitlock, was a former Army medic who now worked as an emergency room nurse. They'd moved into the Pine Ridge subdivision 3 years earlier, drawn by the good schools and proximity to Fort Bragg. The reunion had been planned for months. 12 soldiers from Whitlock's squad, men and women who had served together through some of the most intense combat operations of the past decade, gathering to reconnect, share stories, and honor the bonds forged under fire. They'd started arriving at 10 a.m., filling the Whitlock home with laughter and the smell of barbecue smoke drifting in from the backyard. Whitlock's security system was military-grade. 4 exterior cameras covering every approach, a video doorbell with 2-way audio, motion sensors, and cloud backup that stored footage on secure servers. He'd installed it himself, applying the same attention to detail he brought to mission planning. His squad had teased him about being paranoid, but Whitlock understood something civilians often didn't. Veterans, especially those who'd made enemies overseas, could become targets. Staff Sergeant Talia Beaumont noticed the alert first. Her phone buzzed with a notification from Whitlock's security app, which he'd shared with his squad for the reunion. 2 males approaching the front door. She pulled up the feed and her expression immediately hardened. "Desmond," she called out, her voice carrying the calm urgency of someone who'd called out enemy contacts under fire. "You need to see this." Whitlock crossed to where Beaumont stood, looking at her phone screen. 2 white males, late 30s or early 40s, wearing FBI windbreakers and approaching his front door with aggressive postures. His trained eye cataloged the problems instantly. The windbreakers were wrong. The FBI logo was positioned too high, the font slightly off from regulation. The weapons they carried were holstered incorrectly for federal agents. Their tactical vests were civilian models, not government issue. And most tellingly, they moved like men who'd practiced looking authoritative, not like men who'd received actual tactical training. "Those aren't feds," Whitlock said quietly. "Get everyone inside. Now." Within 60 seconds, 12 combat veterans had moved from the backyard into the house, taking positions with the silent efficiency of soldiers who'd conducted hundreds of operations together. Sergeant First Class Terrell Winscott covered the back door. Staff Sergeant Beaumont monitored the security feeds. Specialist Malik Harrington had already dialed 911 on his cell phone, reporting armed men impersonating federal officers at Whitlock's address. Whitlock activated the 2-way audio on his doorbell camera just as the first fake agent began pounding on the door. "FBI, open up. We have a warrant for the arrest of Desmond Whitlock. You have 10 seconds to open this door." Whitlock's voice was steady through the speaker. "Sir, I'm Sergeant First Class Desmond Whitlock, United States Army. I need to see that warrant and your credentials before I open anything. Please hold your badge and the warrant up to the camera." There was a pause. Through the camera feed, Whitlock watched the 2 men exchange glances. The uncertainty was visible even through the video. They hadn't expected this response. "You don't get to make demands," the second fake agent said, recovering his aggressive tone. "Open this door now or we're breaching." "Sir," Whitlock replied, his voice never rising, Real federal agents are required to present credentials and warrant documentation upon request. That's standard procedure. If you're legitimate, you know that. Hold your credentials up to the camera and we can proceed properly. The first fake agent stepped closer to the door, his face filling the camera frame. His expression was meant to intimidate, but Whitlock had faced down insurgents in Fallujah. A con man in a windbreaker didn't register on his threat assessment. This is your final warning. We have information that there are illegal weapons in this residence. Open this door or we will breach it and arrest everyone inside for obstruction. Illegal weapons. Whitlock almost smiled. Every weapon in his home was legally registered, properly stored, and documented with both the Army and local law enforcement. He was meticulous about compliance specifically because he knew how easily accusations could be manufactured against black gun owners. Inside the house, Winscott had pulled up records on his phone. I've got nothing on any warrant for this address. No federal activity flagged in the area. These guys are ghosts. Beaumont was recording the security feed on her own phone as backup. Local PD ETA is 4 minutes. They're sending multiple units. Should citizens be required to open their doors for anyone claiming to be law enforcement, or should verification be mandatory before entry? Comment your thoughts below. This wasn't just about one attempted home invasion. This was about whether criminals could weaponize the authority of federal agencies against law-abiding citizens. Whitlock pressed the audio button again. Gentlemen, I've served this country for 18 years. I've worked alongside actual FBI agents on joint operations overseas. I know what real federal credentials look like, and I know what real procedure looks like. You've failed to produce a warrant, failed to present credentials, and your equipment is non-standard. I'm not opening this door. Real law enforcement is already en route. I suggest you leave. The effect was immediate. Both fake agents took a step back, their body language shifting from aggressive to uncertain. Whitlock watched through the camera as they consulted in hushed tones, clearly debating their next move. The first one reached for something on his belt, a breaching tool, compact but effective, the kind sold online for tactical enthusiasts. They're going to try to breach, Whitlock announced calmly. Everyone maintain positions. Do not engage unless they enter the residence. We are acting in lawful defense of our home. 12 veterans shifted slightly, preparing. They had no intention of initiating violence, but every person in that house understood use of force law, understood castle doctrine, and understood that armed intruders attempting forced entry into an occupied home had forfeited any assumption of peaceful intent. The fake agent raised the breaching tool, measuring the door. His partner had his hand on his weapon, scanning the windows. Whitlock's security cameras captured everything in high definition, the footage uploading in real time to cloud servers, creating an unalterable record of every moment. Then sirens. Faint at first, but growing rapidly louder. Both fake agents froze. The one with the breaching tool lowered it slowly, his head turning toward the sound. His partner grabbed his arm, saying something urgent that the doorbell microphone couldn't quite capture. They ran. Whitlock watched through the cameras as they sprinted down the driveway toward a white van parked 3 houses down. The van's license plate was clearly visible on the footage. Within seconds, they were inside and pulling away, tires squealing. Winscott was already on the phone with 911, relaying the van's description and direction of travel. Beaumont had the license plate photographed and was sending it to every law enforcement contact she had. Harrington had moved to the front window, tracking the van's progress down the street. 3 police cruisers appeared at the corner just as the van reached the intersection. Whitlock watched with grim satisfaction as the van attempted to turn and found itself boxed in by 2 more units approaching from the opposite direction. The arrest was almost anticlimactic. The fake agents, whose real names were later identified as Connor Fairbanks and Seth Lockhart, surrendered without resistance once they realized they were surrounded by actual law enforcement. They knelt on the pavement with their hands up, all the earlier bravado completely evaporated. Officers secured the van and found a disturbing inventory. Additional FBI gear, including badges and identification cards with multiple names, detailed files on 6 other homes in the Pine Ridge subdivision, complete with photographs, schedules, and estimates of valuables. Zip ties, duct tape, and a portable safe-cracking kit. This wasn't an opportunistic crime, it was a planned operation targeting what the criminals had assessed as vulnerable households. The lead officer, Sergeant Janelle Brewster, approached Whitlock's door after the scene was secured. Her body camera recorded the interaction as Whitlock finally opened the door, revealing the 12 veterans standing in disciplined formation behind him. "Sergeant Whitlock," Brewster said, something between amazement and respect crossing her face. "Dispatch mentioned you had military experience. They didn't mention you had an entire squad." "We were having a reunion barbecue," Whitlock replied. "These gentlemen picked the wrong house on the wrong day." The investigation moved quickly once federal authorities became involved. Impersonating FBI agents was a federal crime, and the discovery of multiple false credentials elevated the case significantly. FBI Special Agent Imani Cross took over the investigation within 48 hours. The evidence was overwhelming. Whitlock's security footage provided clear documentation of the entire confrontation, every threat captured in high definition with timestamp verification. The files found in the van connected Fairbanks and Lockhart to a string of home invasions across 3 states over 2 years. They had targeted predominantly minority neighborhoods, calculating that victims would be less likely to challenge people presenting as federal authority. The first break came when forensic analysis of their equipment revealed a supplier. A former law enforcement officer named Victor Lunsford, who had been dismissed from the U.S. Marshals Service 8 years earlier for evidence tampering, had been manufacturing and selling fake federal credentials to criminal organizations. Lunsford had trained Fairbanks and Lockhart, teaching them how to impersonate agents convincingly, how to select targets, and how to exploit the authority that federal identification commanded. Lunsford was arrested in Ohio 3 weeks after the Whitlock incident. His operation had supplied credentials to at least 4 different home invasion crews operating across the Midwest and Southeast. The FBI estimated that over 60 families had been victimized by criminals using his fake credentials over the previous 5 years. The trial of Fairbanks and Lockhart became a landmark case in federal prosecution of law enforcement impersonation. Whitlock's security footage was played for the jury on the trial's second day. They watched the entire confrontation unfold, heard the threats, saw the breaching tool raised, witnessed the moment the fake agents realized they'd been caught. Whitlock testified for 2 hours, his military bearing and precise recollection making him an unimpeachable witness. He walked the jury through his assessment of the fake agents, explaining exactly how their equipment, behavior, and procedure had deviated from legitimate federal standards. "I've worked with FBI agents, DEA agents, and CIA personnel during my deployments," Whitlock told the jury. "I know what professional federal officers look like. These men were pretending, and they were pretending badly. But if I hadn't had that training, if I hadn't known what to look for, I might have opened that door. My family might have been victimized." The defense attempted to argue that Fairbanks and Lockhart had never actually entered the home, that no property was taken, that the charges should be reduced to attempted crimes. The prosecutor, Assistant U.S. Attorney Xavier Marchand, demolished that argument. "They wore FBI credentials," Marchand told the jury. "They announced themselves as FBI. They threatened to breach the door of a United States Army veteran and arrest everyone inside. The fact that they failed doesn't reduce their culpability. It just means they chose the wrong target." The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Impersonating federal officers, attempted burglary, conspiracy, possession of forged government documents, and criminal threatening. Fairbanks received 22 years in federal prison. Lockhart received 19 years. Lunsford, tried separately, received 30 years for his role in manufacturing credentials and training multiple criminal crews. But the criminal convictions were only part of the story. Whitlock filed a civil lawsuit against Fairbanks, Lockhart, and Lunsford, seeking damages for emotional distress, violation of civil rights, and the cost of enhanced security measures for his family. The lawsuit also targeted the online retailers who had sold the fake FBI gear without verification, arguing they had enabled the impersonation scheme. The settlement, reached 18 months after the incident, totaled $2.7 million. Fairbanks and Lockhart's seized assets contributed $340,000. Lunsford's assets contributed another $890,000. The online retailers settled for $1.47 million rather than face a jury trial with Whitlock's devastating footage. Whitlock used a significant portion of the settlement to establish the Veterans Home Security Initiative, a nonprofit providing security assessments and equipment to veteran families at no cost. The organization partnered with major security companies to install camera systems, reinforce doors, and train families on how to verify law enforcement credentials before granting entry. The case prompted legislative action as well. 3 states passed laws increasing penalties for impersonating federal officers. The FBI released new public guidance on how citizens could verify agent credentials, including a hotline number that could confirm whether agents were legitimate before any door was opened. If you had been in Sergeant Whitlock's position, would you have known those weren't real FBI agents? Share your thoughts in the comments. Whitlock's squad still gathers annually at his home in Pine Ridge. The barbecue has become legendary, not just for the food, but for the story that's retold every year. The day 12 combat veterans watched fake FBI agents try to raid their sergeant's home and learned that some battles are won without firing a shot. The security cameras are still there, still recording, upgraded now with the latest technology. Whitlock checks them every morning, a habit born from 18 years of maintaining situational awareness. The footage from that Saturday morning is preserved on multiple secure servers, a permanent record of what happens when criminals underestimate their targets. Fairbanks and Lockhart are serving their sentences in separate federal facilities. Neither has shown remorse. Court records indicate both still blame Whitlock for their capture, as if his refusal to be victimized was somehow unfair. Lunsford, the former marshal who trained them, filed 2 unsuccessful appeals before finally accepting his sentence. His operation is dismantled, his network of criminal buyers identified and prosecuted. The FBI estimates that his arrest prevented at least 20 additional home invasions that were in various stages of planning. The 60-plus families victimized by crews using Lunsford's credentials before Whitlock's case broke the operation open have formed a support network. Several received compensation from the civil settlements. Others testified at various trials, finally seeing the men who had terrorized them face justice. The lesson resonates beyond one attempted home invasion. Veterans organizations now include home security training in their transition assistance programs. FBI field offices have increased community outreach about credential verification. And across the country, families have learned that it's not just legal but essential to demand proof before granting anyone access to their homes. Desmond Whitlock served his country for 18 years, protecting American interests on battlefields around the world. On that Saturday morning, he protected his home with the same discipline, the same calm assessment, and the same refusal to be intimidated that had earned him medals in combat. The criminals who targeted him expected an easy victim. They found a warrior. If you believe that veterans deserve protection from those who would exploit their service, that impersonating federal agents should carry severe penalties, and that every family has the right to verify credentials before opening their door, subscribe and turn on notifications. Tomorrow we have another story that proves preparation and courage can defeat criminal intent, no matter what uniform the criminals are wearing.